Hi, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to share my and my colleagues' experiences with you. You're here today to think about your own university and how to address the challenges that we're facing across higher education. My name is John Friedman. I guess I have to start using the past tense, professor of sociocultural anthropology at University College Roosevelt in Middelburg. UCR is a branch of Utrecht University. And I use the past tense because on February 19th, I, along with 30% of my colleagues, were fired on a Wednesday afternoon. And I started work at UCR 2 months before this new, small, little university opened, and I've been there along with my wife. We were both recruited from the UK to help open that new type of liberal arts and sciences college in the Netherlands. So we both worked there for 21 years. And I've been asked today to share with you something about our little place, our little university. It is little. It's located in the little town of Middelburg in Zeeland, on the edge of this little country. But out there in that little place of ours, we have been really encountering some very, very big issues. And I'm here as a founding faculty member of that university, and I'm also here as a recently discharged employee of that university, but I'm also a sociocultural anthropologist, not a field that necessarily many of you have ever encountered in the past. And it's often said that us anthropologists, we ask big questions in little places. That's sort of one of the ways we capture our discipline. We ask big questions in little places. And that's quite true. We are interested in trying to understand the sort of social and cultural complexities that are inherent in human group living. And we do that really by exploring these really big questions in little, local, small places and communities. So my research, for example, has been exploring for the past 30 years state power. It's a big, big issue, big problem. But I, of course, have to do it somewhere, and I've been doing that in a small little town on the Angolan border in northwest Namibia for the past 30 years. So big question, small places. And in having worked for so long at this little university, this little place, for the past 21 years at University College Roosevelt, I sort of can't help, I guess, share my recent experiences with you via that sort of anthropological big questions, small places sort of frame. So that's what I've set out to do. So allow me, if you will, to share with you a recent sort of timeline of events as it relates to the state of higher education in my little place, but also as it relates to the state of higher education in the Netherlands and in Europe and in the United States, where I originally come from. It's a timeline. So on 16th of May, 2024, you all know the new coalition government here in the Netherlands announces its intention at that time to cut up to 2 billion euros from its education budget. And these cuts include, of course, proposals to restrict the number of foreign students at Dutch universities. And then on the 4th of June, 2024, last summer, Utrecht University appoints a new interim dean for my University College Roosevelt, a retired plant biologist who had and has no background in the liberal arts and sciences. And he is formally asked to focus on, and I quote, the future of UCR and the long-term financial sustainability of the college within the established strategic plan 2022 to 2027, the existing plan. 5 weeks later, 10th of July, that very same dean, along with UCR's second member of the executive board, we have two members of our executive board, they approve and sign our university's annual report. Here it is. Let me just quote a little bit for you. I quote, July 10th, UCR had its highest number of applications and advances ever, indication that efforts to raise the profile of the college and recruit students are paying off. In 2023, UCR had a student body of just under 600 students. The goal is to have a similar enrollment in 2024, with any increase in numbers being a bonus. I continue. The activities in 2023 were concluded with a surplus of euros 1,563,243. I'm still quoting. This operating result for UCR was 1.4 million euros better than budgeted. The financial position of the college remains solid. I'm still quoting. Finally, internal control and management systems have improved significantly. Higher student enrollments, tighter budgetary controls, a lean approach to operations, and a new recruitment policy have resulted in a healthier financial position for UCR. The multi-year perspective shows positive annual results up to and including 2027, with a small negative result in 2028. The board, however, can mitigate this by falling back on financial reserves, end quote. I might add that UCR's Board of Trustees approves the Executive Board's report in its entirety, also on the 10th of July, 2024. Get this, on August 22nd, 2024. 5 weeks later, less than 5 weeks later, less than 5 weeks after signing this independently audited legal document, I and most of the rest of my colleagues finally meet and see for the first time our new interim dean appointed by Utrecht University. It's the regular beginning of term all faculty meeting. Our dean shows up, barely says hello, and starts asserting immediately in no uncertain manner that we are failing as an institution of higher education, that our program is hopelessly out of date, that our students are unhappy, that our recruitment prospects look bleak, and that we are facing a dire financial crisis. And, he says, we're all there in one room. If we don't change our program and address our financial situation immediately, we are destined for imminent bankruptcy. So what changed during that short 5-week period between his signing of that very optimistic annual report and his welcome address before me and my colleagues? That has been and remains one of my big questions. Okay, let me carry on, though. During the month of September, the two members of our executive board, along with input from our director of education and an admissions coordinator, develop, without hardly anyone else's knowledge, a new curriculum plan for the entire university. While they are busy doing that, on 18th of September, an accreditation panel visits UCR. It's been 4 or 5 years. And on 20th of September, the panel shares its overwhelmingly positive review on all standards and criteria used in its assessment. It gets funnier. Nonetheless, throughout the entire fall semester, and unknown to almost all employees and all students, the weekly off-campus meetings continue in order to plan a reorganization and the round of mass employee firings that are eventually to take place. Meanwhile, I'm going to move you a little bit across the English Channel. The Office for Students, which is the independent higher education regulator in England, reports to us on the 15th of November that 40% of UK universities are in financial crisis, with over 50 institutions undergoing redundancy and restructuring programs, with the most at-risk programs being in the humanities and the human sciences. On 11th December, back in our little place, a few of UCR's faculty receive an email from their union informing them, us, I was one of them, that UCR's executive board had informed the union that a reorganization is now on the books. That was the first we heard of it, an email from our union. It was the first time we had heard the R word in relation to our little university, December 11th. A couple hours later, after hearing that the union had told us this, our executive board follows with an email of their own, confirming their intentions to reorganize because of significant financial deficits and reductions in student numbers. And they blamed the said union for having, and I used the word, they used it, thwarted their process. They wrote that. It's true. Okay, stay with me. On Friday, 31 January, in another place, quite far away, in fact, Mr. Elon Musk, an unelected U.S. government official, acting at the behest of U.S. President Donald Trump, literally turns off the United States Agency for International Development's website. Boom, just turns it off. Goes dark. Friday. The next day, Saturday. While most Americans are sleeping in late and or getting ready for another weekend of mostly sporting and entertainment, Musk shows up at the offices of the USAID carrying a chainsaw. Literally, he's carrying a chainsaw. You must have seen the picture. On Monday morning, 3rd of February, most Americans are getting back to the office and settling in for another week of hard work. But USAID no longer exists. It's gone. The impact of USAID's closure on global higher education is revealed 5 days later, on 8th of February. 830 higher education institutions in up to 130 countries around the world will no longer receive capacity strengthening support from the United States government. Thousands of international students who are receiving university scholarships from USAID will be withdrawn. And hundreds of millions in education for all other levels of education in the global south are immediately slashed. 2 days later, 10th of February, all of us at UCR, all of my colleagues, get invited to an individual mandatory meeting with the executive board, one-on-one. No reason is given for the meetings. On 17th February, fearing the worst, our students initiate a university-wide strike, halting all educational activities on campus. The next day, UCR's executive board suddenly, with an email, closes the university, literally closes it for 2 weeks. They literally lock every building and facility. Closed. Then on 19th February, that's the next day, UCR employees, we have our individual private meetings with the executive board. Under the watchful eye of a private security firm, brought in. Big men, like 2.5 meters big. They're standing there. We are all informed officially for the first time that UCR will formally reorganize. And 30% of us are fired. Me and my wife included. And that's nearly 60% of our associate and full professors. Of the faculty fired, 80%, more than 80% of us teach in the humanities and the human sciences. of the disciplines that are totally removed from the curriculum, nearly all of them form part of the humanities and human sciences disciplines. These individual meetings took 4 to 8 minutes each. 21 years, 4 to 8 minutes. It was a bloodbath. It was traumatic. Everyone was traumatized. Our students were crying. My colleagues were crying. It was awful. And you know what? Institutional meltdown began immediately. Immediately. The university is locked, so I do the next logical thing. I take my teaching to the streets and to the public library across town. 1 month later, 18th of March, Istanbul University revokes the degree of Istanbul's mayor, the biggest political rival to President Erdogan, on grounds that it was falsely obtained 30 years ago. Yep. Under the Turkish constitution, all presidential candidates require a higher education degree. 2 days after that, 20th of March, in another big place, Donald Trump signs an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education, the entire department. The U.S. government begins withdrawing hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding to U.S. universities across the country, and, if you haven't read about it, begins incarcerating foreign students in the United States. These are students who are there legally, who have not broken a single law. They start incarcerating them for simply expressing a constitutionally protected opinion about the U.S. government and its policies. Yep. The foreign students in the United States are being imprisoned for asking the wrong big questions. Yeah. And then just 5 days ago, and nearer to both of our little places here, the University of Sussex in the UK receives a fine of £585,000 after an investigation finds that it failed to uphold freedom of speech and academic freedom, as well as its own management and governance processes. Now here we all are today, assembled together to consider these big issues happening in big and small places all around the world, including my university and maybe here at your university too. We are here to consider how these big issues might end up affecting this little place, your little place. And as I'm seeing it, there are really 3 big elements to this issue. And I'd like to quickly share those with you before I finish. The first one is that higher education throughout the world is in a state of crisis. And it's not necessarily a financial crisis, in my opinion. Not at all. Even though it's often sold that way, and it manifests that way. Our education crisis is really the result of large parts of our society and our governments not prioritizing or properly valuing education. And when this lack of societal and governmental prioritization hits us in the form of budget cuts, the second big element emerges. The ensuing cuts hit the same disciplines, the same fields of knowledge, the same programs, time and time again. Right? It's the humanities and in the human sciences more generally that are being sliced out of our higher education institutions everywhere. Now, once these fields of knowledge and learning are cut out, once we no longer cross-subsidize these less popular fields, and once we no longer have many people trained in this type of knowledge about us humans, then who's going to be left, I'm wondering, to stand up and ask big questions that the humanities and the human sciences are asking today? There might not be anyone left in the room to ask these necessary and important big questions. And the third major element that I'm struggling with these days has to do with process. And in particular, the speed and the force at which these sorts of seismic shifts in public policy and practice are being pushed through. Elon Musk and Donald Trump have wiped out entire government agencies in a mere weekend, while so many university boards everywhere seem to be doing things quite similarly, and also without any stakeholder or public debate. Very little deliberation, lightning fast, and before the weekend is over, everything is suddenly upended, fundamentally restructured. So with respect to higher education more particularly, why is this happening? I have an idea. I'd argue that during these late neoliberal times, we have fetishized the sort of entrepreneurial class to such a great extent that we have inadvertently turned over our institutions of and for the public good to that particular breed of managerial science. And in the process, they've become much more susceptible to political weaponization. Our governments, our NGOs, our charities, our universities, and our schools are now being run and managed as if they were for-profit corporations, and sometimes even as if they were political instruments. But the not-for-profit and education sectors do not have shareholders. Shareholders who are seeking essentially to maximize financial value. Rather, we have a set of societal stakeholders. And these stakeholders seek other types of returns and are defining value in non-financial ways. Now, even though I'm hearing that your university in this little place claims to be fairly stable, although what Livio was quoting himself gave me some concerns listening to that, some flashbacks, in fact. But it seems like this little university, which is much larger than mine, is claiming that you all will ride out the forthcoming budget cuts. But I would really urge you all to not hesitate in reminding your education managers and your education executives and your politicians and your parents and your students that there are still some of us out and about who are still paying attention and are still listening and are still ready to defend. Our recent experiences in Middleburg, in that little place, should remind you that even though you are being told everything is going to be okay, there still is a very real possibility that you too might arrive back at work after a nice weekend to find your own chainsaw-wielding executives preparing also to clear-cut your humanities and human sciences departments. That just happened in our little place, and it's happening in many big places all over the world. And given the current state of affairs, it could just as easily happen here. So please keep paying attention. And thank you again for having me.